ਮੇਅਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੇਅਰ ਆਫ ਸਿਟੀ ਆਫ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਮੇਅਰ ਹਨ। ਕਾਫੀ ਲੰਬੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੋਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੁਝ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਕਾਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਚੋਰੀ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ। ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਤਾਂ ਗੋਲੀਆਂ ਵੀ ਚੱਲਣ ਲੱਗ ਪਈਆਂ ਥੀਏਟਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਅਤੇ ਜਿਸ ਹਿਸਾਬ ਨਾਲ ਡੇਂਜਰਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਾਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਚੋਰੀ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਆ ਉਹਦਾ ਕਾਫੀ ਧਿਆਨ ਰੱਖਣਾ ਪੈਣਾ ਆ। 121 ਮਿਲੀਅਨ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਆਟੋ ਥੈਫਟ ਆਟੋ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਨੂੰ ਫਾਈਟ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ। ਸੋ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਵੈਲਕਮ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਮੇਅਰ ਦਾ। ਮੇਅਰ, ਵੈਲਕਮ ਟੂ ਦ ਸ਼ੋ।
Happy to be on your show.
$121 million given by the government to fight the crime. Where will that be used?
So we don't have any allocation of that locally yet. I would note the last time they announced this, Peel Police got $900K. Those announcements are very small in the overall picture of auto thefts. We have tripled our auto thefts unit locally. We've added 135 officers this year, 76 new officers last year. Largest increase in the Peel Police force in our history, year after year. But it's not about the number of officers. Really, if we're going to solve auto theft in Canada, which has now become a $1 billion industry, you have to look at the root sources. And what we're seeing in Canada is auto thefts have skyrocketed in Ontario and Quebec, and they are being exported to international markets, largely from the Port of Montreal. So you'll see a car stolen here, 5 or 6 hours later, it's gone. And it is now the third largest revenue tool for organized crime in Canada. It's drugs, guns, and cars. The difference is, with drugs and guns, if you get caught, you're in jail. If you get caught stealing cars, it's a slap on the wrist. Maybe you spend one night in jail. And so to address this, one, we need serious penal consequences for auto thefts. But the other glaring issue is we need to have screening at our ports. We need to make sure it's not so easy to export stolen goods from Canada. In Canada, we have screening by CBSA of less than 1% of our shipping containers. Contrast that with the US, and it's over 40%.
But that's CBSA. But when it comes to policing, when a person calls in, the car is stolen, the police officer doesn't get there, or he goes, "We don't have time."
Yeah, so
we in one way we can blame them for not checking the cars, but we got also got to blame the police for not getting there on time.
So I'll explain it to you. Right now there are more calls to 911 than officers able to respond, and so it's not that the police don't want to get to every call. They have to tier responses. So if there is a violent carjacking, that would get priority over someone who wakes up in the morning and says my car was stolen 5 hours ago. The reason we've seen such a skyrocketing number of auto thefts, we've seen a 300% increase.
Yes.
And the reason you've seen this increase is you could add 1,000 officers and it wouldn't be enough. The reason it's happening so quickly, they'll steal a car, it's into a truck or a shipping container, and it's gone. And the police don't have authority. Our Peel Police can't go to CN Rail Line and say, I want to open up the shipping container. Only the CBSA have authority. Someone will take the tracker off the car and they'll throw it in a field, or they'll throw it in some residential area. To address this, and the best contrast I can use to explain is the US is 10 times the size of Canada. The US is 350 million, Canada 36, 37, 38 million, depending on the latest figures. In Canada, we have the same number of auto thefts as they do in the US. So why, despite them being 10 times the size, are we having the same numbers? And the difference is they screen in the US, and we don't screen for criminality here. And so the chiefs across the country have been pleading, we need to deal with border security. Canada cannot be known as a source country for stolen cars. Until we address the leak in the bucket, everything else you're doing is just a bandage. You have to address the leak in the bucket. And that's why we finally got a breakthrough. Our chief had a summit with all the chiefs of police in the GTHA a year ago. And we pleaded with the federal government to listen to us. This is funding organized crime. The old public safety minister, and we said, we need to talk to you about this fact that our cars are all going to the port. And his response was, we're focused on guns. And we said to him, what do you think stolen cars are funding? Yeah. They're funding guns. The good news is the new public safety minister, Dominic LeBlanc, has taken a different approach. He wants to listen. He wants to learn. He called an auto theft summit for February 8th to look at how the federal government can help deal with this crisis. I'll be going to that summit along with our Chief of Police, Nishan Dirappa, our Deputy Chief, Nick Milovich. And this is the first time we feel that the federal government has come to the table, so it's very encouraging.
So you know where the cars are going. The whole public knows where the cars are going. Why don't we work with the country to say, listen, these cars are ours. They've been shipped from here. Why don't we do work, with the other country where the cars are going to? So, whether they're going to Jamaica, whether they're going to Dubai, whether they're in Qatar, wherever they're going, why aren't we contacting them? Listen, our cars are being stolen. We can't screen them enough. Why don't we work together to get those cars back?
So RCMP have tried to deal with that. You don't have much success once it's out of the country. Then you get into interjurisdictional complexities. You have to stop them from leaving the country. It's why I say, why does Canada have such a high auto theft rate compared to other countries? Why are we seeing this happen in Canada, but not at the same rate in the UK or the United States? It's screening. The countries that have low auto thefts have screening in their ports.
What about tougher penalties? These guys are out the next day.
Well, that was the first thing I said.
Yeah. These guys are out the next day. They steal a car, they're out the next day. And we've seen cars, one car gets stolen, the second car gets stolen. We've seen cars...
That's why I was saying that what we need to have is real penal consequences. I want, just like there is with drugs and guns, I want to make sure people that are involved in organized crime to steal cars have real consequences. Not because right now they're paying kids to go steal a car. Some kid might get $2,000. The organized gang will resell the car for $100,000, and they'll go to that kid. If you spend a night in jail, we'll pay you another $10,000. It's that blatant, and that's why I'm saying there has to be real consequences. And if you do that, we're going to start to unravel these gangs.
There's software companies that come up with really good softwares, and where you can't start the car, it won't start, it won't shift. You guys ever work with a software company? Listen, can we create something up so they can't steal the car or copy the key?
So listen, every month there's a new software company that has a new idea for the car companies, and by and large you'll see every new year that the car is introduced, they've got state-of-the-art safety software. What we've noticed, though, as soon as the car company comes with the latest state-of-the-art safety security equipment, guess what happens? Gangs then find a way to get around that new safety technology. And so really, yes, we can continue to challenge the auto sector to come up with high-tech safety requirements, but the response of the auto industry has said, why is the same car in Canada so easily stolen when the same car, the same security devices, is stolen 90% less in the US? And they'll say, it's the ports. You have to deal with your border. You have to have border security.
Is your police officer used efficiently across the board? Where it's supposed to be working? Because I've seen police officers sitting at lights where you could have a security guard at a construction site, free those two officers 24/7, use them at someplace else. I've seen officers that dressed up at not-for-profit events that you need some. They're getting paid. Why do we use those officers where we really need them?
So there's... And I say this, you're not alone. There's a lot of misunderstanding about the laws around policing. And so someone will see, some police officer at a sporting event or at a construction site. And they're like, why is that person not fighting crime? That's not paid for by the police. That's an off-duty officer. And the construction company, under Ontario law, has to hire a police officer if they're shutting down a road for construction, so they pay for that officer. The construction company does. If there's a sporting event you see police officers at, that sporting organization pays for the police officer, and it cannot be when the police officer is working. If a police officer chooses to come in their off hours to do additional work, it's called paid duty officers, but that is not part of their work assignments. The chief chooses where to assign officers, so I'd say it's very important to distinguish of what a police officer's assignment is and what they may do in their free time. So you may be working and you do your 35 hours in the week. What you do when you leave work is your choice. Your boss can't tell you what you do when your evenings or your weekend.
So your Auto Theft Summit is coming up, and how are you going to assure the Bramptonians that you're working on this issue?
Well, I'm probably the most vocal mayor in Canada when it comes to auto thefts, and I'm going to continue to be vocal. I have spoken about this in the news relentlessly. And I think it's why the federal government have asked me to come to the summit, and I'm going to continue with my big push. Tougher sentences for those that commit auto theft crimes and secure our ports. Those are the two big areas that chiefs of police in the GTA have identified that we could put the brakes on auto thefts. So I'm going to take that message to Ottawa, and I really believe if the government wants to tackle this growing problem, this is the way to do it.
Brampton's been on the map, left, right, and center these days. Now there's drive-by shootings at the theaters. I just want to talk a little about the international students. I know.
But let me just correct that. The shooting. There was a headline on a social media website said shooting in Brampton. Sometimes there is microaggression and racism towards Brampton, where people like to attack Brampton. In this case, the headline said shooting in Brampton. It was in Markham, Richmond Hill, Toronto, and one in Brampton. But the headline said Brampton. And so, I think as a city, we need to push back against misinformation. There was an out-of-control riot in Malton during Diwali and fireworks. And the headline in the article said, riot in Brampton. It was in Malton. It wasn't even in Brampton. And so I do get tired when I see some, for social media likes, try to target Brampton. And we're not going to tolerate that. We're going to call it out and expose it when we see it.
So let's talk about the international students. Mitzi back then, she put a moratorium in now to open up these private colleges, the little puppy mills you call it. Then Doug Ford's gentleman came in, he let these colleges open up. Now, college comes to Brampton in 2-3 rooms, registering over 100, 200, 300 students. How do you monitor that? How are you going to control the population?
So you can't monitor that. And so it's why we have asked the federal government to link, and we've been very vocal on this as a council, to link the international student visa approval with actually having a housing address. And so I would say all political parties are to blame in this. There was a ton of puppy mills for the diplomas before Doug Ford, and there continues to be. But largely this is ultimately, it's up to the federal government to issue a visa. And so what I have spoken to the immigration minister about is very clearly, stop issuing so many visas to schools that have no plans for housing. And to give Mark Miller credit, he's our new immigration minister, he's listened. He's put a pause on the program, and they're looking at linking housing to the visa approval. And so, I commend the government of Canada on that. It's great that they're finally making these changes.
I know Canada need immigrants. They need immigration to fill up the gaps. So if the students come to Sudbury, tell them you got to stay in Sudbury. If you switch the college, go someplace else, you got to go back. If we need you in Brampton, apply again. Why can't we have that law? Why can't we work on that? If we need a population in Timmins, go to Timmins.
So that requirement doesn't exist right now. It'll be up to the government of Canada to make that a requirement, and that's one of the issues that Brampton asked for. We want, if Timmins gets approved for 5,000 students, then they need 5,000 housing address. What we're seeing right now is we've got students going to school in Montreal and Windsor and Waterloo, but living in Brampton. There's no reconciliation or connectivity between housing and where they go to school, which is why Brampton made that ask in December.
So now, with the new changes with the cap on there, if these colleges close, whether they're in Brampton or Mississauga, wherever they are, who's going to cover their education and costs? This is what happened in Quebec. Because if these colleges close up because they can't get new students, who's going to cover up their costs in education now?
Who's cover up for what?
Colleges closed in Quebec. Students were on the road. Because they put a cap on. Now they put a cap on in Ontario. So if these closes run out of money, colleges run out of money, how the students going to get the education?
I'm certainly not interested in continuing to allow puppy mills to offer diplomas where students don't even show up. If some of these sketchy colleges close down, that's probably a good thing for the system.
But what are the students that are registered already?
Well, let's have those students go to a reputable campus or college that has a housing plan.
All right, I've seen you drone a couple of times. Mayor's got a flag raising ceremony going on. This is live on Veracity. Mayor, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
There's a lot more questions. We'll get back some another day. Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you. All the
ਤੁਸੀਂ
best.
ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਵਿਰਾਸਤ ਟੀਵੀ ਲਾਈਵ ਔਨ ਲੋਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਹੋਏ ਸੀ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਲੱਗੇ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਰਨ ਅਰਾਊਂਡ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਵੀ ਕਿਸੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆਟੋ ਥੈਫਟ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਕਾਰ ਜੈਕਿੰਗ ਆ ਔਰ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟਸ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਛੇਤੀ ਤੋਂ ਛੇਤੀ ਸੋਲਵ ਹੋ ਜਾਵੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੋਲਵ ਹੋ ਜਾਵੇ ਮੈਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਬੱਚੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਐਜੂਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਨਾਲ ਪੈਸੇ ਵੀ ਲੂਜ਼ ਕਰ ਲੈਣ ਬੱਚੇ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਪੈਸੇ ਬਚਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਨ ਚਿੱਠੀ ਲਿਖਣੀ ਪੈਣੀ ਆ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਆਫ ਦਰ ਕਾਲਜ ਵੀ ਜੇ ਸਾਡਾ ਕਾਲਜ ਬੰਦ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਕੀ ਕਰੋਗੇ ਦੇ ਰਹੋ ਵਿਰਾਸਤ ਟੀਵੀ ਤੇ ਵਿਲ ਸੀ ਯੂ ਆਫਟਰ ਦਿਸ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ